Good evening, and welcome to From Homelessness to Housing, Healing the Housing Crisis. My name is William Tarter Jr., and I'm the director of the Office of Civic Engagement at Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. On behalf of our Chief Executive Officer, Maria Fosha, and over 160 staff partners here at LMM, we are thrilled to host this very important event alongside such esteemed organizations such as the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless, or NEOC, Eden, and Enterprise Community Partners. Tonight's event is the most recent event in a long history of civic engagement, education, and dialogue here at LMM. Founded in 1969, the mission of Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry is inspired by our Lutheran faith tradition and our commitment to act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly, grounded in Micah 6:8. Our mission is to challenge injustices faced by those who are oppressed, forgotten, and hurting by providing responsive solutions, voice, and hope. LMM's founding began as an ecumenical response started by the Lutheran Church to the urban uprisings that took place in the east side of Cleveland in the mid 1960s. Over the last 5 decades, LMM has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to addressing chronic needs, enabling people in our community who are facing adversity to become self sufficient and championing for systems change. Our programming focuses on innovative and effective services in the area of guardianship, housing and shelter, workforce development, and youth resiliency. We challenge and invite you to learn more about our initiatives and support our efforts to restore dignity and hope to people who are oppressed. Learn more at lutheranmetro.org. A few logistics for tonight's event. Our event is being recorded and will be posted at a later date. Additionally, we want to remind you that early voting for the November 2025 election is already underway. Please put your questions in the Q&A. We will try and work them into the program. Joining us this evening are representatives from organizations who are involved in homelessness and housing issues, as well as the voices of Cleveland voters. We are really looking forward to tonight's conversation. To start us off, I'll turn it over to Josiah Quarles and the team at NEOC.
Well, thank you, Will. It's an honor to be here. My name is Josiah Quarles, pronouns he, him, and I'm the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at the Northeast Ohio Coalition for the Homeless. What you see is our most recent annual report booklet, and our theme was solidarity over everything, and that has guided us in this tumultuous year and will guide us continually forward. You can hit the next slide. Our vision is that everyone has a safe and stable place to call home. And we exist to eliminate the root causes of homelessness while loving our diverse community through organizing, advocacy, education, and street outreach. All of those will be touched upon very briefly in this presentation. And to the right of that, you can see the principles that guide us in our work. Next slide. So at this point, I want to hand it over to one of my colleagues and a Cleveland resident himself. They are the street outreach coordinator, Drew Martin. Tell you about street outreach.
Thank you, Josiah. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. First and foremost, I want to get into a bit about what street outreach is, or really what it means. To me, street outreach is about increasing people's agency, not taking it away. A lot of people can start to think that it's about like, oh, we're just getting these people housed, so we need to get these people out of here because there's some complaints. But really, it's about making sure that people are met where they're at. I myself personally have had experiences where I thought I was expected to get through things alone, and surprise, surprise, that didn't work out too well. And I was extremely fortunate to benefit from the outreached hand of some very special individuals. Looking at our slide here, you can see some of the things that we've done. We've helped 322 unique individuals experiencing unsheltered homelessness start the process of receiving help finding homes. We've also helped 181 people receive crisis intervention, and 82 people find housing during that time period. I am truly honored and proud to be a part of such a great team and great group of human beings who really help people get to where they want to go. Um, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Next, I want to talk about the IDCC, or the Identification Crisis Collaborative. This was an independent operation for 20 or so years until they joined up with us. And essentially, what they do is help people find or get access to essential documents, things like ID, like driver's license, state ID, birth certificate, social security card, all these things that you need in order to function in today's society, whether it's for medical care, housing, pretty much anything that you need to, um, s- make it in this society that we live in. It is a really great program. Over 100 IDCC trained staff at over 40 locations have been helping people for years be able to start to get their life back on track. It's really an incredible program, and really great, was a really great addition for us, and help a lot of people. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And I believe Josiah will be taking this part, education, but thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Drew. And we'll hear quickly from you again at the end of this. But everything starts with our street outreach. That's what informs all of our practice. And then kind of the first way that I think that is metabolized is through education, education within our own staff, our training regimens, but we also take that education out into community. So we engage with speaking events, teach-ins. We publish a street chronicle, which allows folks who are unhoused to both be vendors and contributors to the paper and let community know what's going on as well. We also work with high school students. We do immersive experiences, and we have hosted for 2 years running a Housing Justice Summit, which has brought keynote speakers, panelists, and workshops for the community around housing justice issues. And so we want to continue that on a yearly basis. But from that education, that leads us directly into our advocacy and organizing. And so to speak to that, I have another colleague and Cleveland resident with me on the call, one of our housing justice community organizers, Toria Catron. If you want to take over, and you can hit the next slide.
Hi, everyone. Again, my name's Toria. I'm a housing justice community organizer here at NEOC, and I'm part of our organizing and advocacy team, which does a little bit more of that upstream work. In addition to that street outreach, this is what really makes NEOC's reach so far, makes it go further. I'll say one of our biggest events every year is our annual memorial. This past year, we honored over 80 family and friends who passed away in the homeless community, to remind our community that no one should die without a home. And that goes back to our feeling and centering around solidarity over everything. A big part of our work, especially at this time of year, is about civic engagement. So engaging and registering unhoused and poor people to vote. As Josiah mentioned, we do a lot of know your rights trainings, going out to buildings, working directly to help them organize as tenants. We canvassed over 1,300 households facing eviction as part of the Right to Counsel program in this past year. And a big other part that we've worked on is the Care Response program, which pushed for alternatives to police response. Go move on to the next slide here. Lots of points here that I won't read through every single one, but some really notable things that NEOC has been a part of in this past year includes the United Residents of Euclid Beach. That was a huge campaign in 2024 and helped achieve an estimated value of $50,000 to $70,000 per resident in support and relocation. We have tenant associations at over a good handful, almost a dozen different buildings, and do different kinds of opportunities to mobilize folks, whether that be rallies, press conferences, lots of different opportunities. And one thing that we want to hold very dear and central to our work is lived experience. So that includes, accessing leaders in the homeless space, in addition to doing outreach, building them up to skill them up to join the work.
Awesome. So all of that is done under the acknowledgement that housing is a human right, and until we get there, we'll continue this work. We understand that solidarity isn't standing with someone; it is walking with them. That's what we try to do in our work, in this movement work. And lastly, I just want to look forward. So last slide, I believe. All right, so there's lots of stuff that we think could be great in our community. We think a tenant community opportunity to purchase, so that we can keep properties in community service and in the public good. Caps on application fees, which can become an inordinate. Screening protections, tenant screening protections, so that people are not excluded so much from housing opportunities. Support for tenant organizing across the city. Tanisha's Law and Care Response, expanding and integrating that into our emergency dispatch systems, supporting diverse social housing options, tax abatement reforms so that we can work on that supply side, a receivership fund so that buildings that can be held before they fall into disrepair, and a homeless bill of rights to protect everyone's rights regardless of their housing status, particularly in this moment. We see large breaches in our civil liberties and human rights. So that's all we have from a programming standpoint, but I will leave Toria and Drew a quick opportunity to say anything that they would like to say as Cleveland residents, what they would like to see from the city.
I'll start. As a resident of Ward 7, I think there's a lot of things that we see on the ground every single day that need addressed, but I want to speak to just like a greater culture on city council that I hope to see. And that would be just more support for community work and partnership rather than co-opting or cannibalizing the work that people are doing on the ground. And I'm excited and hopeful for that to happen.
Thank you, Toria. For myself personally, as a resident of downtown Cleveland, what I want and hope for from a candidate is someone who gets to know the people in their area, not just the people who they think that they normally see every day, but the people who are often ignored. Considering the pressure in a lot of areas to criminalize homelessness, we need someone who will fight for the rights of everyone, because every single human being here deserves dignity, respect, and care.
Thank you so much, Drew. Thank you to Josiah, and thank you to Toria for those powerful words, and really appreciate the team at NEOC for all the work that you do, and really appreciate you guys starting us off on a very encouraging note. Our next presentation is going to be from our colleagues, the staff partners at Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry and the Housing and Shelter Program. We will be hearing from Claire Billingsley, who works as Assistant Director for Housing and Shelter. Claire?
Thanks, Will. And I echo your appreciation for Team NEOC. That was great. And I just love everything you guys do for our community. So thank you. I do have a presentation, but for now, I'll just introduce myself real quick. I'm Claire Billingsley, Associate Director of Housing and Shelter at Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. And I have so much to cover, so we're just going to whiz through. Let's go, Heather. Today, we're going to talk about LMM a little bit, what causes homelessness, what we're seeing now at our shelter, LMM solutions, and how you can help, and then my perspective as a Cleveland voter and resident. Next slide, please. So Will already covered our mission and our service areas. I'll just skip over this. Within housing and shelter, our mission is to provide emergency shelter, supportive services, and solutions to homelessness. The cornerstone of this work is our men's shelter at 2100 Lakeside, which is the largest emergency shelter in the state. And we recently expanded to 2020 Lakeside with the support of Cuyahoga County. We also operate the Family Overflow Shelter, which is overflow for when the traditional family shelter system is full. Recognizing that shelter is not the solution to homelessness, LMM has been progressively involved as an affordable housing provider and developer, and I'm going to talk more about that later on in this presentation. Next slide, please. So the causes of homelessness are really systemic. We're talking about the lack of affordable housing, poverty, and systemic racism, which are all, of course, inextricably intertwined. Some of the things that some people associate with causes of homelessness are more so personal barriers and catalysts that might cause a person to first enter the homeless system. Things like substance use disorders or mental and physical health conditions or interpersonal issues. But the cause of homelessness is the lack of affordable housing and those associated root causes. Next slide. This graphic, please forgive me, it's 10 years old, but it's just so poignant. And I promise the trend has continued, unfortunately. The top line that's continually increasing is rent, and the bottom line is income. And this is national data, inflation adjusted. You can see that rent has just been outpacing incomes for over 20 years now. Next slide. Here in Cleveland, these are not ward boundaries, they're zip codes, but I still think it's helpful for you all. In Cleveland, to afford a modest 2-bedroom apartment, a person needs to work multiple jobs usually. They need to earn at least $19, $20 an hour to afford that 2-bedroom apartment. And you can see here the median hourly wages in Ohio are not meeting that need. So most folks are needing at least 2 jobs just to afford basic housing in Cleveland. Next slide. The folks who are most likely to experience homelessness are those with extremely low income. And this slide is showing the makeup of those folks with extremely low incomes. You can see the vast majority are either disabled, seniors, or actively in the labor force. Next slide. Among people experiencing cost burden and severe cost burden, which is when you spend 30 and 50% of your income respectively on housing costs, we can see that Black and Latino households are disproportionately impacted, especially compared to white and Asian households. Next slide. This one mostly speaks for itself. It's comparing the rate of, or the amount rather, of federal assistance for permanent housing resources compared to the number of people experiencing homelessness. You can see we have a way to go. Next slide. So those are the causes of homelessness. Once somebody experiences homelessness, where do they go? Who do they talk to? This is a system overview of our continuum of care here in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, and I did steal it from the county. I hope that's okay. NEOC doing their street outreach is going to be in the lower left here, and you can see they're connecting folks directly to shelter and housing resources. LMM is going to be that temporary shelter that folks are connecting to from NEOC or other outreach providers, or from coordinated intake, which is like our central command hub. From our shelter, we're going to connect folks to preferably permanent housing outcomes, but also temporary and transitional outcomes, some of which we operate in-house. Next slide. So what do people experience when they come to our shelter? We have about 400 to 430 people every night at 2100. Last year, we served 2,600 people just at the shelter alone. And then within our broader service area, we served 3,400 people. Last year, we had 700 positive housing outcomes and I believe 200 positive employment outcomes, which is great. Most people who come stay for less than a week. So we're really even like 2 or 3 days. We'll see people come in who don't need much support. They just need a place to stay, rest their head for a couple days and move on. But what we're finding over time is that as we get some of those lower barrier folks housed, over time, our population is trending towards higher barrier, higher acuity folks. So we're seeing a lot of elderly people, people with severe mental and physical disabilities, and severe reentry backgrounds, especially people with sex offenses. And it's extremely difficult to house these populations with the existing resources that we have. To make it all work, we have 2,000 annual volunteers that do everything from computer lab monitoring to Reiki. It's really an amazing place, and we invite you all to come visit for sure. Next slide. So again, shelter not being the solution to homelessness, but rather housing, we've focused on a bunch of different tactics here. So we have programmatic housing solutions, which we collectively call our flex funding, basically just direct cash transfers or one-time infusions to get folks housed as quickly as possible. It might just be giving $600 to one of our men's shelter residents to self-resolve, or it might be paying utility arrearages or buying a plane ticket home to reunite with family. This program has been extremely successful. We're seeing success rates ranging from 75 to over 90%, depending on population and typology, which is just really incredible, and we're very excited. It's increased our positive housing outcomes by about 25%. And then we also have capital housing programs, which I'll talk about now. Next slide. So our first housing initiative from 2015 was shared housing. It's basically living with roommates. Everybody has their own lease, their own bedroom, and then shared common areas. Rent is $400, including all utilities. And since we started, only one person, I believe, has returned directly to shelter, which is just incredible. We were able to expand with support from the land bank, so we now have 12 units of shared housing. Next slide. When we started operating the family overflow shelter, we recognized there really needed to be more family housing resources. So we launched our Breaking New Ground campaign. We surpassed our initial goal of $3.5 million to build or renovate 20 units of affordable housing in St. Clair Superior, which is our home at LMM. We're nearing completion of that process, and it's been a really beautiful, exciting program so far. My favorite piece is that we built in our own Family Stability Fund, which is essentially a private subsidy that folks can lean on if they have a job loss or a medical emergency. They're not going to be evicted because of that. Next slide. Our solar homes are our first new construction properties. I believe the ribbon cutting is going to be scheduled for next month, so very exciting. These are also in St. Clair Superior and are 500 square foot efficiency duplexes. We're aiming for a target rent of $450 by virtue of having really low operating costs from all of the efficiency features. So that's super exciting. Next slide. And then looking to the future, we're very excited about 3D printed housing in Cleveland. We actually secured a pilot grant contract with the city to explore this, and we're in the research and planning phases. So that's awesome. So how can you help? I really broke it down into 3 buckets: funding, reducing red tape, and YIMBY. So funding, obviously, if you have CDBG dollars, we want them, but also providing letters of support for other funding opportunities can often go a long way for us. Reducing red tape, this is more so from our perspective as a developer, but reducing the amount of time spent in permitting and zoning would really help reduce, our staffing costs and the costs of holding properties. And also reducing barriers for tenants. I love that NEOC uplifted that. We would love to see reduced tenant barriers, just like we have in our own properties. And then YIMBY, we need vocal, proud advocates of affordable housing. We need people who are willing to educate their constituents and spread the word that more housing is good for all of us. Next slide. So my perspective as a Cleveland voter, I live in Ward 15 now, but I think is going to be Ward 11. I have loved all of the support and communication that I've gotten from my council person thus far, living here for 8 years, and also from the CDC, and they've worked really closely together, which I think is really important. I'm in the flexible zoning pilot area, which I think is really exciting, but I haven't really seen a lot of movement on it. So I'm excited, maybe in a couple years to see where that goes. And then I'm just really proud that there's a lot of home repair, paint fund, down payment assistance programs that are promoted actively in my community, and I have benefited from some of those programs. My request would be to encourage planning and zoning meetings to be hosted like when people can attend them, and not just at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, and then just be accessible. By being here or watching this recording, you're already part of the way there. So thank you so much, and I appreciate your time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Claire. Really appreciate your words and your expertise in this space. And it's one thing that I really appreciate is in a traditional candidate forum, the candidates are featured and the audience is there to listen and learn. In tonight's presentation, we're centering the voices of Clevelanders, and we're hoping that this provides a firm foundation upon which candidates can watch and learn about these critical issues. So thank you, Claire. Really appreciate you. You may have seen on one of the Claire slides was Eden, which was a big part of that continuum, and we are excited to have Eden as a part of our program this evening. I'll turn it over to the team at Eden.
Hi, everybody. My name is Judy Engel, and I am the Director of Development and Communications here at Eden. And after our presentation, I'm going to introduce you to Katie Westbrook, who is our intrepid manager of housing supports and a very proud Cleveland resident. Next slide. Before I get into the nuts and bolts of Eden, just some context for our work. Claire underscored some of the wage and income constraints faced by residents. But just to point out that for every 100 Ohio households that are considered extremely low income, there are only 40 affordable housing units, which really underscores the dearth of affordable housing in our community. Next slide. And these stats will really weigh on one and underscore the need. In November of 2023, we opened up a wait list for one of our programs that had 350 slots of affordable housing opened. And during the time period, the 3-day time period, we received 8,323 unduplicated applications for those 350 slots. And of those applications, 1,500 of the applicants were currently homeless individuals. In March of this year, we opened a wait list for 32 hours and received over 1,000 submissions for that wait list. And that wait list, the programs for that wait list offered only about 10 units per year. Next slide. So our role in the continuum, as you can see on the screen, there are several buckets. One of them being our Eden-owned scattered site portfolio and HUD properties. These are single-family homes, condominiums, duplexes, small apartment buildings that we own and manage. The next part of our portfolio are our permanent supportive housing buildings. We own and manage 14 of those. 13 of them are in the city of Cleveland, and these are larger scale apartment buildings. They have on average of about 60 units, and the wraparound case management services are on site. And these are for the longest term homeless and those with the most barriers to housing. We also own the Norma Hare Women's Center, which is the primary emergency shelter for women in the county. And we, most of you will probably know that we are currently undergoing a significant renovation of the shelter and addition to make it a non-congregate space. And as a result, we have had to relocate half of the residents of the shelter to another site on Walton Avenue. And during the past year, I think about 1,100 women sought emergency shelter during the year. We are the primary agency to administer rapid rehousing in the region. And that is for 12 months of housing, rental assistance and supports. The primary source of our rental assistance is through our long-term supportive housing, which are more long-term programs. There are about 3,000 households who receive long-term supportive housing each month. We offer stability and other eviction prevention and other supports. And our most important role is as a partner to the dozens of other agencies that comprise our continuum of care. Next slide. Eden's mission is to provide housing solutions to those facing the challenges of housing insecurities and homeless. Like NEAC and all our partners on the call, we recognize that housing is a basic right and the first step in helping people to stabilize and transform their lives. We also believe that it serves as the foundation to build stable lives, advance independence, and fulfill aspirations. And it is a key social determinant of health. Next slide. In this one, you can just see our growth over the years. We started in 1991 with one property and a staff of 3, and now we are a staff of 190 and a budget of 56 million. And many people think, oh, Eden's budget is so large. They must be, you know, going gangbusters and doing aces. And while we do much with a very razor thin margin, and that is because over 90% of our funds come in and go right back out in the form of rental assistance and supports to our participants. Next slide. Our approach to housing focuses on supportive housing, long-term programs, so that there's time for stability, linking with services, choice and location. We want folks to have as much autonomy in their choice of living as possible, housing stabilization and eviction prevention, and figuring out where gaps exist for affordable housing and addressing where we might fill those gaps. Next slide. Our housing portfolio currently stands at 1,200 units, and that's comprised of our scattered sites, which again are those single family homes, condos, etc. Our HUD multifamily buildings, our PSH apartment buildings, the larger buildings with the supportive services on site, Norma Hare and Walton's shelter, our Adams owned properties, and our residential care facilities. Next slide. PSH might be what people most know us by. We have worked with our Permanent Supportive Housing Coalition partners to decrease homelessness, chronic homelessness, or long-term homelessness by 78% since we began this work in 2006. We now have 13 buildings, with the most recent building, the Lotus, opening at the end of last year, and that is for young adults experiencing homelessness, age 18 to 24. And we just broke ground on our latest, that is Emerald Senior, and that will be a 62-unit building that serves homeless seniors, and 25 units will be left for homeless senior veterans. Next slide. Our rental assistance program, we administer 20-some rental assistance programs, and that's where the head of household pays 30% of their income towards rent and utilities. And as long as they maintain eligibility, they are able to maintain their contract. These contracts are funded through our COC, the Adams Board, MARB's Board, Cuyahoga County, City of Cleveland, and HUD. And these, again, are our long-term subsidies. And our short-term rental assistance is where the head of households receives their full rent payment for a 12-month period. This is also known as rapid rehousing. And that's funded through our COC, the state of Ohio, Cuyahoga County, and Healthy Beginnings and Home through CSH. There are some specific programs allocated for those fleeing domestic violence and human trafficking, and also for those re-entry citizens. Next slide. Eden's work is really predicated upon linkages with property owners, tenants, the tenants/participants themselves in Eden, and this just underscores how we all work together. Next slide. We also have housing stability services on and in our agency. They help folks locate a unit quickly and also help them with the inspection process. Helps us to contact and work with landlords and work with the landlords to put available unit information online. We maintain housing and reduce terminations through our stabilization services, helps folks with their recertifications, and if they have any issues with their lease compliance. Next slide. During the past year, Eden assisted over 10,000 individuals with housing, homeless prevention assistance, and shelter. And that again is broken out in that we served over 4,000 households with rental assistance. Another nearly 800 households received homeless and eviction prevention assistance, and another 1,100 individuals received emergency shelter at Norma Hare Women's Shelter. Next slide. So there are some prevailing myths that come up. Some of them are that if someone gets on an Eden program, they're on it for life. And that is not the case. All of Eden's subsidy programs are contracts. Some of them are long-term and renewable, but none of them are permanent. And each individual has a yearly recertification process. Another myth is that although almost everyone Eden serves a person with disabilities, Eden itself does not provide case management, mental health, or medical services. Eden provides on its dozens of care partners in our continuum of care that provide these services and work with our participants and residents. And most of our programs do require a connection to services. And aside from a few exceptions, services are not mandatory. All of our programs and units are leased. They are not dorms, temporary housing, etc. So participants must be able to understand and sign a lease. We follow landlord-tenant law, and the one exception are Norma Hare and other sites we own and manage on behalf of other operators. Eden is a housing agency. We are not a public housing authority. While we do similar things, we primarily serve persons with disability. And we do that by administering 40 different programs in addition to owning and managing different housing types. Next slide. The 3 takeaways that we hope that you will take away and plan on partnering with us on your work is that rental assistance is absolutely critical. As you know, federal funding currently is extremely uncertain, but we know that rental assistance keeps families stably housed. For example, the Home for Every Neighbor has successfully diverted hundreds from homelessness. Many of these households are now served through Eden's housing programs. As a result, ongoing, locally funded and supported rental assistance will be needed in the future. Next slide. Another takeaway is that affordable housing requires capital. We must preserve and expand Cleveland's affordable housing stock. Capital dollars for both renovation and new construction are essential, yet extremely scarce. Most financing for this purpose is loan-based, but nonprofits like Eden cannot repay such loans. Preserving and maintaining affordable housing takes resources, but it is far less than the cost associated in letting it go. Next slide. Takeaway 3. We need to strengthen the nonprofit city partnership. We deeply value the city as a critical partner in housing solutions. Processes should be improved and streamlined for greater service delivery and greater efficiency. Some examples are quicker reimbursements on grants, clearer communication, and less bureaucracy. A stronger partnership means better outcomes for our neighbors in need. Nonprofits are called to support the city in implementing the city's goals and we cannot afford to float and maintain programs without timely contracts and reliable reimbursements. So now I'm going to turn it over to Katie, who is going to give you a little testimony.
Good evening. As Judy said, my name is Katie Westbrook. I'm the manager of housing support at Eden, but tonight I'm coming to you as a Cleveland resident. I had the privilege of being born and raised on the west side of Cleveland. I remember when I was young and growing up, going to baseball games and other events downtown, and there being so many unhoused people on the streets and around Tower City. I remember in the cold nights of playoff baseball, when we used to have a lot of it, many people sleeping on vents and around Tower City to stay warm. I left Cleveland in 2006 for school and returned after graduating. When I returned, I noticed less people sleeping outside and on the streets in general. This was a direct impact of permanent supportive housing and the effect it had had on our chronically homeless population throughout our community. I began my professional career doing mental health outreach work in the community and in the shelters. I had the privilege of working with the city of Cleveland on the Irish Bend project and working on getting the outside population to relocate before developers came in and forced them to leave. Eden was a vital partner in this, although I was not working at Eden at the time, and assisted with unique housing alternatives that met people where they were, offering PSH apartments and community vouchers when individuals were ready, which led the groundwork for what Irish Bend is today in the area people enjoy so much. I began working at Eden in 2018 and continue to see the impact of Eden that it has on our city. It gives a lot of residents and participants coming out of shelter the opportunity to live in desired areas. I myself live in the Detroit Shoreway area, which has continued to be an up and coming desirable area, and have many Eden participants living not only on my street, but throughout my neighborhood. The impact this gives to the whole community by giving everyone a chance at housing, but also desired housing, continues to be such a positive impact on the whole city. So thank you for your time and being here tonight.
Thank you so much, Katie and Judy. Really appreciate both of you. And thank you to the team at Eden for being a part of our conversation this evening. The final organizational presentation we're going to hear from is Enterprise Community Partners. And for that, I'll turn over to Hazel Ramesh and the team at Enterprise.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, LMM team, for having us tonight. And I don't have any slides, so I don't know if you want to stop sharing or feel free to take the PowerPoint down. I am tonight with a colleague of mine, Brendan Zach, and also a Cleveland voter, and I will let him sort of introduce himself in a minute. But at first, I wanted to give a little bit of a background about what we do at Enterprise. And for those of you who don't know me, I'm an attorney by trade. I do our state and local policy work over at Enterprise. I spent a lot of years representing folks who were low income in displacement cases, so eviction cases, landlord-tenant law. And so that's kind of where many of my personal priorities have been for the last, major part of my career. But now let me just talk a little bit about Enterprise and what we do. So first of all, our mission at Enterprise is to make home and communities places of pride, power, and belonging. We are a national nonprofit, but we do have a local market here covering the entire state of Ohio, and an office in the city of Cleveland. We do that, or we meet our mission with a couple of different goals in mind. So first of all, trying to increase the housing supply to make sure that people can afford the homes that they have available to them, that we can preserve and produce good homes. Our second goal is to advance racial equity, and that's after decades of systemic racism in housing. And then lastly, to build resilience and upward mobility by supporting residents and strengthen communities to be resilient when things are unpredictable. Now, at Enterprise at the national level does a lot of different things. We sit in what's called our solutions division, which is really focused around designing, testing, and scaling solutions to address and meet the goals that I just mentioned. So that includes, at the local level, running various programs, and Brendan can talk a little bit about one of the programs that he runs, and policy and capacity building. So supporting community development organizations with funding, programs, and technical assistance, and really advancing housing policy at every level of government. And I think part of this webinar was really to touch on what are some of the needs that we are seeing in the housing space. And I'll kind of categorize this into 3 different buckets, and these are some of our priorities on the policy side. So first of all, we need to strengthen fair housing and renter protections. That includes things like source of income protections, increasing renter rights, and eviction diversion. Those are all very, very critical things in order to make sure that we have stable neighborhoods. We need to make sure that we are preserving affordable housing. So not just new production, but also the preservation of what we currently have in stock. So that's an end approach. So things like leveraging the low-income housing tax credit or the state housing tax credit, advocating for a local housing trust fund, supporting the creation of green communities, so that our neighborhoods can be thriving. We need to make sure that partners on the ground can have long-term financial health. We talk, you already heard a little bit from some of the partners on this call, but that's really, really critical. We need to make sure that we are providing housing that's safe so that our kids are not being poisoned. And then thinking about opportunities for home ownership, specifically in communities that have previously been marginalized. The third bucket I want to touch on is making sure that one of the needs that we see is to reduce barriers to housing and promote equitable housing. So these are things like advancing policies like eviction ceiling and tenant screening protections, promoting housing access for just as involved populations, making sure that if we have opportunities at the local level to advance fair chance housing ordinances, and making sure that we are advocating or addressing property tax for homeowners, especially those who are going to be priced out of the market or getting to a point where they are going to be, they're going to suffer, especially given our population aging. So making sure that they are able to age in place. So just as a recap, sort of the 3 buckets that we are really focused on in terms and thinking about is strengthening for housing and renter protections, preservation and creation of affordable housing, and making sure that we have that there are the least amount of barriers so that people can access the housing that we currently have available. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brendan to give us a little bit of a perspective from a voter side, and introduce yourself, Brendan, and take it away.
Thank you, Hazel. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brendan Zach. I'm a Cleveland voter. As Hazel said, I am a very proud resident of the Old Brooklyn neighborhood, and I work for Enterprise Community Partners, where I focus on affordable housing programs in Cleveland and Cuyahoga County. One of these programs is the Make It Home program, which focuses on tenant-occupied tax foreclosed homes to give wraparound services to those tenants, home repair dollars, and a few other services, so that they can become successful homeowners of those properties. So tonight, I want to urge all candidates here to make housing, affordable, accessible, quality housing, a top priority for Cleveland residents. We talk a lot about the capital A affordable housing, LIHTC subsidy programs, among others, but what we don't center enough is that most people who live in affordable housing live in naturally occurring affordable housing. These units were not purposefully created, but naturally occurred due to weakened housing markets, lack of maintenance, the age of the property, or a combination of all of those factors. When we talk about Cleveland's housing market, we need to differentiate between affordable and quality housing. Cleveland has a plethora of affordable units, but a severe lack of affordable quality units. Relying on housing units that have severe deferred maintenance is not an acceptable strategy to help our lower income neighbors. I believe that community development and neighborhood stabilization are 2 sides of the same coin. Cleveland needs to protect our most vulnerable people against predatory landlords through increased renter protections, source of income protections, ensure that everyone lives in safe, decent housing through code enforcement, enforcing our lead laws and funding home repair programs, and remove regulatory barriers to allow more housing to be built across the city, especially near transit hubs or housing with universal design principles ingrained in them to ensure that our neighbors with mobility needs have proper housing. Cleveland needs to focus on the human aspects of our neighborhoods by improving the lives of our neighbors, which will naturally lead to healthier, stronger neighborhoods. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brendan, and thank you so much, Hazel, for your words from Enterprise Community Partners. Really appreciate all the work that your organization does in this space. We're now going to move to the Q&A portion of our program tonight, and we do have some questions in the chat, as well as some questions that we'd like to ask each of our panelists for this part of the program. So we're going to start with one of the questions that we received, and that was a question about funding buckets. And the question was, is there any difference in funding buckets for currently homeless individuals and folks trying to prevent homelessness? I'll ask for the team from Eden if they could touch on this and kind of help explain the differences between the two. Uh-oh, did we lose folks? All right. Well,
I just
looks like we're
needed
having some difficulty.
sorry, just
Oh, there
needed
we go. Hey,
unmute.
Judy.
Is it
No problem.
for currently homeless and folks trying to provide? Yes, there are differences in those funding buckets. The funding buckets for currently homeless individuals all come through the single point of entry, which is coordinated intake, and those funding buckets through our continuum of care programs. The individual must be homeless. For those who are trying to prevent homelessness, those would be our eviction prevention funds and the sorts that Katie works with, and those are different funding buckets with more one-time support sources.
And like Judy said, a lot of the dollars do go through the continuum of care. So you do actually have to touch coordinated intake or NEAC because they're a referring agency as well. But there used to be a lot of one-time assistance fees to prevent. Unfortunately, those funds have kind of died down and there isn't much in the pipeline, but we're hopeful that more will come soon. Maybe.
Excellent. Thank you. And for any of our panelists, if you'd like to jump in on any of the questions that we pose, please feel free to add your thoughts. A reminder to our guests, you can also put in your questions into the Q&A and we'll try and work them into the program. Did I hear someone else wanting to chime in?
Yeah, well, I was just gonna piggyback off what Katie was saying. One of the things that we saw during the pandemic was, a huge influx of rental assistance funds that really had never existed before. And that created a lot of stability for folks who were, at risk of displacement, either because they were facing eviction or maybe they weren't in eviction court just yet, but they were, sort of in queue and were likely going to end up in eviction court. So there were, policies in place at the time, like a moratorium, like a federal moratorium. And, at that time, Right to Counsel was rolling out and rental assistance, and sort of those three things together from a policy perspective really had an impact in making sure that folks were being housed. Now, Right to Counsel is still in existence, but obviously there's no eviction moratorium. Their rental assistance has run out. So those were all interventions that really were critical in making sure that people were avoiding that displacement and potentially ending up in the shelter.
Thank you so much. There was also a question in the chat that talked about seasonal housing. And as we enter into the colder months, I was wondering, Josiah, if you could touch on the, and not just Josiah, but feel free anyone to chime in. But I know NEAC has done a lot of great work in the seasonal space. And so I'd like for you, if you could just introduce that to our audience, kind of talk about what that is and why that's such an important thing going into the colder months.
Yes, absolutely. So, shelter, we have year-round emergency shelters, and there are some different transitional spaces and things that people are moving through over the course of the year. But there are also a lot of folks who are not accounted for within those systems that are largely who our outreach workers are working with, folks who are unsheltered and unhoused. So folks living in cars, living in abandoned buildings, living in tents, right? And as the temperature drops, a lot of those situations become untenable. They become unsafe. And so people seek shelter, and we don't necessarily have the capacity for that influx. And so we have had reoccurring kind of pop-up seasonal shelters that have been managed in a variety of ways by a variety of groups. Metanoia is one group that has done a lot of work, and they've usually been located at different churches. But there's a challenge because none of those facilities are R1 facilities. They're not temporary residential facilities. So it's always been a tenuous situation. Many seasonal shelters have been cut short, closed down early, or forced to open really late. And what that does is it puts our outreach workers in a really, really challenging position, because in the winter months, when there's nowhere to take someone, you can't just visit them and work with them where they are, because where they are is unsafe. And so it really makes it almost impossible to get the work done. And so having stability in a seasonal shelter every year that you can count on, where you can have more wraparound services, where you can have more embedded care, so that on the other end of that seasonal shelter, folks are coming out and they're getting housed, is so important to our community. So we're really looking to stabilize that space. And last year was the first time that the county put up some money for a seasonal shelter. There's another that they have renewed that. So that is open again this year. And so hopefully this does get stabilized and we're able to have that asset as we work to end unsheltered homelessness.
Excellent. Thank you. Claire, I saw you come off mute, so I wanted to make space just in case you wanted to chime in. I didn't know if you wanted to chime in there on that as well.
I didn't mean to go off mute, but I will chime in.
Okay. Sorry about that.
I was just thinking, actually, though, listening to Josiah talk about the struggle to find these churches or other facilities that would meet the need for seasonal shelter. That's another small way that city council representatives can help is as service providers, we're always looking for sites, whether it's for shelter or for housing. And so if you're aware of locations in your community that could be brought back to productive use and help people, we want to know about them and we want your support in making that happen.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And we're going to end tonight with a question that we want to hear from everyone, if you can. Just tell us what gives you hope for the future as we're looking into this topic. If everyone could just kind of share with us what gives you hope for the future, and then we'll turn over to Heather to close us out. So feel free, anyone can popcorn in.
I'll chime in. I think for me is conversations like this, right? Like the fact that that there are still folks like that are, willing to come on and listen and be receptive to the feedback. I think that's really important as we move forward as a community.
I'll say what gives me hope is getting outside and being with other people. So just having the opportunity to stand up, advocate together, and do that solidarity, not just over the phone or over Zoom, but to be there in person.
Yeah, I'll second
Awesome.
that. It's the people, it's the community members. It's seeing them, like, the light go on and being like, wait, that's my right. Wait, they can't do that to me. Like, wait, I can do this. Wait, we can do this. Wait, you want to help? And seeing that light go on, and even folks in really, like, what most people would consider like really despairing situations, really they're able to find hope. And if they can, then I certainly can. So I definitely have hope, and they're the people who give it to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And on that note, we're going to just say thank you to all of our partners who joined us this evening. Thank you to the team at NEOC. Thank you to our colleagues and staff partners at Lutheran Metropolitan Ministry. Thank you to Eden for all the work you're doing. And thank you to Enterprise Community Partners. Most of all, thank you to all of you for joining us this evening. I'm going to turn the closing remarks over to my colleague in the Office of Community Engagement, Heather Paramore. Heather?
Hi, everyone. I will say, just to close this out, what gives me hope is, in times of struggle and times of pain, when people are going through their hardest times, it's the healers. And I think what's been really, the people who are healing the system, people who are healing people, and the people who are there every day. And so I'm really grateful to be in a community full of healers, and I'm grateful to be on this journey with you all. We're so grateful for you to join us today. We are, for anyone who's interested in learning more about LMM or any of our partners, we really encourage you to connect with us. We'll be sending out some contact information for you to get in touch with all of us, but also all of us have social media platforms, email lists, websites, so check us out online, wherever you get your information and sources of news. We are happy to raise awareness and understanding on these issues, because we know it takes a team and it takes a village and a community to solve the issues of homelessness in our community. So we need your support now more than ever. So please connect with us. Thank you so much to our presenting partners. We work with all of these groups regularly, and so we're so grateful that they took some time out of their evenings to help us out. So whether it's LMM, from our shelter, or also our partners at NEOC, Enterprise Community Partners in Eden. Thank you so much for all the work that you do. We wish everyone the best of luck this election season, and we look forward to keeping in touch. Have a great evening, everybody, and take care.